Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. We begin today with President Trump's National Security Advisor, Ambassador John Bolton. Good to have you here.
Glad to be with you.
We had different versions of the story as to why this summit failed to produce any results. Why was the president unable to negotiate a breakthrough?
Well, I don't consider the summit a failure. I consider it a success defined as the president protecting and advancing American national interest. There was extensive preparation for this meeting, extensive discussions between the president and Kim Jongun, and the issue really was whether North Korea was prepared to accept what the president called the big deal, which is denuclearize entirely, under a definition the president handed to Kim Jong-un, and have the potential for an enormous economic future, or try and do something less than that, which was unacceptable to us. So the president held firm to his view. He deepened his relationship with Kim Jong-un. I don't view it as a failure at all when American national interests are protected.
But to be clear, North Korea still has not agreed to denuclearize as the U.S. defines it.
Not as we have defined it, although they have committed in public in prior regimes in North Korea 4 or 5 times in writing to denuclearize, and it's something
so that doesn't mean much to you.
We expect them to do if they reach an agreement with us.
Well, on the specifics, a senior State Department official spoke to reporters and said that what the North Koreans proposed specifically was about dismantling the 3-mile Junghyun complex, which he defined as, quote, the totality of North Korea's plutonium reprocessing and uranium enrichment programs in exchange for lifting all sanctions except those on the weapons programs. Did the U.S. make a counteroffer?
Well, the counteroffer has been there from the beginning, from the very first summit back in Singapore, which is if North Korea commits to complete denuclearization, including its ballistic missile program and its chemical and biological weapons programs, the prospect of economic progress is there. The president,
but that's not what North Korea put on the table.
That's not what they.
This narrow definition.
A very limited concession by the North Koreans involving the Yongbyon complex, which includes an aging nuclear reactor and some percentage of their uranium enrichment, plutonium reprocessing capabilities. In exchange, they wanted substantial relief from the sanctions. Now, one thing President Trump has said beginning in the 2016 campaign is that he's not going to make the mistakes of prior administrations and get into this action for action kind of arrangement, which benefits
there was no counteroffer.
The North Koreans. Our counteroffer was where we have been, where the president has exercised his persuasive abilities on Kim Jong-un to take the big deal, and they weren't willing to do it.
But what made the president stake out this maximalist position? You've negotiated with the North Koreans before, going back to 2002. Did you see the same pattern playing out now?
I think the difference that President Trump has articulated to the North Koreans is the future for them once they make the strategic decision to denuclearize. What they've done before is promise to denuclearize, get economic benefits in return, and then renege on the deal. What the president was trying to get them to do was look at what was possible for them overall. And I think he remains optimistic that this is possible. Kim Jong-un himself said in our last meeting, you know, we're going to go through many stations before we achieve this deal. The meeting in Hanoi was one such station. So the president's ready to keep talking.
Are you expecting North Korea to come back with an offer?
I don't know what they're going to do. I think the president himself said that he expects they'll want to go back and reevaluate what happened. Certainly we will. We'll look at continuing the economic sanctions against North Korea, which brought them to the table in the first place. We'll see what happens next.
But in the meantime, North Korea can still produce nuclear fuel.
And they have been doing it. Yes, they have. That's exactly correct.
So they're a growing threat.
Well, I think our objective remains to find a way to get them to denuclearize. The president's trying this negotiation, but his objective has always been denuclearization.
But is the window for diplomacy about to close here? I mean, this seems like an open-ended timeline.
I wouldn't say it that way. Look, the president opened the door for North Korea and Singapore, and they didn't walk through. He kept the door open.
8 months ago.
He kept the door open during that 8-month period. He kept it open in Hanoi. The North Koreans can walk through it. It's really up to them. That's the diplomatic window.
When you were on this program last July, though, you said the plan was to dismantle North Korea's nuclear facilities and have it turn over its weapons of mass destruction within a year. Is that still a realistic timeline?
No, the question you asked then was operationally, how long would it take? There was some dispute within the U.S. government over a period of time. Once North Korea made the strategic decision to give up its weapons of mass destruction, ballistic missiles, how long would it take to conduct that dismantlement? And with a few exceptions, our judgment was we could finish it within a year once the process started.
So you still think it'll take a year to dismantle it, but you acknowledge they haven't even agreed to denuclearize.
No, they have not agreed.
And there's no
exactly.
expiration date on this offer to continue to negotiate.
There's no expiration date. As I say, the president is fully prepared to keep negotiating at lower levels or to speak to Kim Jongun again when it's appropriate.
But aren't they a growing threat if they can continue to develop nuclear fuel? Doesn't the leverage get reduced on our end?
I don't think the leverage gets reduced because I think we will keep the maximum pressure campaign in place. Even before the summit, we were looking at ways to tighten it up, to stop, for example, the ship-to-ship transfers that the North Koreans are using to evade the sanctions, to talk to other countries to make sure they tighten up on North Korea. It was the sanctions that brought the North Koreans to the table. It's the sanctions they want relief from, and relief they can get if they denuclearize.
Before the president went to Hanoi, was the U.S. aware that North Korea would not allow anything beyond the Junghyun complex? I mean, this second uranium enrichment site that the president nodded to in his press conference. Did you know that was not on the table?
Well, we don't know what's on the table from North Korea until it comes out of the mouth of Kim Jongun, the chairman.
Well, that's what the diplomats are supposed to be laying the groundwork for, so the president doesn't walk away with a failure.
He didn't walk away with a failure. Unless you're prepared to say that it would be better to accept a bad deal than to walk away from no deal, to me, that's a success.
So you thought that nothing else was on the table. You were just testing the prospects by sending the president to Hanoi.
No. We honestly didn't know. I mean, it's not unusual in these circumstances to find that there are additional concessions that the other side might make. But we've tried to make it clear to them, again, the president has said this repeatedly, we're not going to make the mistakes of past administrations. We're not going to make the mistake that Obama made in the Iran nuclear deal. What we want is denuclearization broadly defined as the president himself laid out for Kim Jong-un in the paper that he gave him.
So, but you've tested this proposition now of what it's like to negotiate top down.
Well, we've had two meetings.
Commander-in-Chief to try to do this. It was a very different approach, but the success rate hasn't been anything more than in the past.
Well, the success rate in the past was 0. So that's not a hard bar to overcome. There's an argument that proceeding deductively rather than inductively makes a lot of sense. We've had 2 meetings. We'll see what happens next.
But in the meantime, as we say, they can still produce nuclear fuel. And as you saw after the president left Hanoi, Kim Jong-un stayed there. I mean, he was walking around touring hotspots in Vietnam. He no longer looks like a pariah. Didn't he gain from this?
I don't think that's the president's view at all.
He sat across from the president almost as if an equal.
He did that in Singapore. The president's view is he gave nothing away.
But do you actually believe that?
The president's view is he gave nothing away. That's what matters, not my view. As I've said before, I guess I can't get people to listen, so I'll try it one more time. I'm the national security advisor. I'm not the national security decision maker.
Well, your views have been well documented in the past.
Usually by me. I mean, I've written a lot. I've written a lot in the past.
You've been skeptical for many years.
And as I've said, those views are out there. Anybody can read them. My job now is to help the president, give him his advice, give him my advice. He'll make the decisions.
And to be clear, the administration still is no longer advocating regime change.
The position of the administration is we want denuclearization of North Korea, and that's the objective we're pursuing.
And you still believe that Kim Jong-un can deliver on that?
I think he is the authoritative ruler of that country, and if he were to make the strategic decision to denuclearize, we think it would happen.
The president was asked about this American student, Otto Warmbier, who died tragically after being released after some brutal treatment in North Korean captivity. When was it that the president actually brought up his case to Kim Jong-un?
Well, that was in one of the meetings on the second day, I think. And look, the president in Hanoi. The president's
Is that the first time he brought it up?
No, I think it's been brought up before. I think it was brought up in Singapore. But the president's been very clear. He viewed what happened to Otto Warmbier as barbaric and unacceptable. And I think The best thing North Korea could do right now would be to come up with a full explanation of exactly what happened to him.
But it seemed to suggest that the president, since he said he took Kim Jongun at his word, was willing to put aside these egregious human rights abuses and basically the killing of an American while in captivity.
Listen, I've heard the president talk about Otto Warmbier on any number of occasions in the Oval Office, and I know how strongly he feels about it. I have no doubt of that whatever.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you, the House Oversight Chairman Elijah Cummings has requested information about your personal security clearance. Is there anything you know of that would have raised a red flag, what he's looking for here?
Not at all. You know, someday I'll be a private citizen again, and I'd be delighted to take this nonsense on in detail. But as a White House official right now, threatened with subpoenas, with a lot of other things that's going on in Congress, I'll take guidance from the White House counsel's office and the Justice Department and just wait for the day when I'm a private citizen.
But counsel, the White House will respond to this.
They will respond to it. That's correct.
Ambassador Bolton, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.